Welcome to this week's episode of The Retirement Spy, where we share experiences and a collaborative platform for those entering phase two of life and are ready to embrace this chapter with gusto and an attitude of carpe diem. You can find out more about us at www.theretirementspy.com or send us ideas and topics to info@theretirementspy.com. Today's topic is searching for love in retirement. I'm really excited that we're joined today by a technology entrepreneur and a creator of a podcast called Beyond the Swipe, which is focused on finding love in later years after a divorce or death of a loved one. My friend today is Hoyt Prisock, who founded this podcast and will be the one walking through us with some of the ideas that he has for us on the matter. Welcome, Hoyt.
Thank you, Duncan. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Tell me a little bit about how the podcast idea came about. You've been running with this for a few years now. Tell me about its origins and what it's about.
So, as you probably know, I had become divorced about 10 years ago now. And after a couple of years of just, kind of bopping around on my own, I wanted to start dating again. And so, the funny story is it's actually my dermatologist that convinced me to get online to date. She said, it's just numbers, man. Like, all right, what are your chances of actually going and meeting somebody at the Whole Foods or at a bar, or at a restaurant, or at a concert or something where you don't have any filters on that, right? It's random kind of stuff. So she made me realize that, well, man, that's you really got to do that today. You really got to get online. And I honestly met so many great people when I was online dating myself, and ultimately ended up marrying a fantastic woman that I met online as well. And so overall, my experiences were just fantastic. And I had developed this group of friends, many of whom were single, maybe recently divorced. So they were just getting back into it. They were not having quite the experience that I was. And this is men and women. And I think what it was is that they were a little bit mystified by the whole online dating experience.
It's intimidating, isn't it?
It is intimidating, and it can be. And the last time that most of these people were dating might have been 20, 25 years ago, right? So that technology was not in place at the time and certainly wasn't mainstream at the time. So it occurred to me, look, I know enough about this stuff. One of the companies that I had created in the past was a speed dating online platform that we ran with Match.com. And so I knew a little bit about the space, and I thought I can demystify this for people, right? I can make it less intimidating and make people feel more comfortable about vulnerability, about putting themselves out online, and just taking the chances. And so that was the mission here. And I thought, look, I don't really know that much about podcasting, but hey, hold my beer. I'm going to try this.
And you've done such a great job with it. So you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you're re-entering the dating world after 20, 30 years, it's not the same. And I say this, I have a 25-year-old son who's trying to explain online dating to me and giving me the backstory. Heaven help me if I created my own account to learn more about this, which I'm not going to do because I'm very happily married of 30 years. But it's an intimidating place. Our audience at the Retirement Spy are those who are entering phase two, and some are fortunate. They're still with their first wives and they're happily together, but others
And some
don't.
are unfortunate that they're still with their first wives.
Well, some people do it differently than others, but I don't pass judgment either way. Some things work out, some things don't. But when they
Yes.
don't, and you're in a new world, a new environment with technology, and old people and technology should go together very well, but sometimes there's a disconnect there. Online dating, I don't even know where to begin. Can you give us, our audience who may be new to the dating scene, an idea of where to even begin as it relates to getting back out there?
So that's a really good question, Duncan. So there are a couple of platforms out there that have been around for 25 years, right? So I'm talking about Match.com. I'm talking about companies like eHarmony. And then over the course of time, there's a platform for everybody. There's Only Farmers, right? There's JDate. There are all of these niches. And really, for the most part, a couple of companies really control that whole space. So, for example, Match.com was the big dog, right? That's where everybody went. And then you had new entrants into the market over time companies like Hinge, companies that you may have heard of, like Bumble, which is the platform that I was mostly on. And those became, they had a different message, right? So Match.com was basically everybody put their resume up, right? And you're looking and you're reading all this stuff and you're putting it, and you have to, reach out, and you may get, a nice looking woman may get 100 messages when she first comes out online, because there are all these guys that say, yeah, let's see if we can meet. But as that technology evolved, it really got smarter, right? And so platforms like Bumble, for example, their rule is that the woman has to move first.
Interesting.
So she has to say, I might be interested in that guy. Now, a lot of it, to be honest with you, Duncan, is a little superficial, right? Because you're getting maybe a paragraph, maybe two paragraphs, and a couple of pictures. And you're supposed to make a decision based on a couple of pictures.
Tell me
So it's
this.
the surface. Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons to keep it brief, I guess, and not ever being dating on the site. You're not, this isn't a LinkedIn profile or a Facebook. You're given a specific amount of information you can give, and you have to guess at the rest. Help me with what's that's like. So, well, the
Well,
first question is, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Go.
no. So what I was going to say is that the way that they do that is that if you read these couple of paragraphs and it intrigues you, they sound like they're funny, they sound like they're intelligent, they may be what you're looking for, they're attractive, right? So typically in today's world, you swipe right if you're interested, or you swipe left if you're not interested, right? So that provides that initial signal of whether someone is maybe interested in engaging with you. So when you have both parties that say swipe right, that both say, yeah, maybe, then you're open to texting back and forth through the app. So you get to know each other a little bit by text. And then typically it evolves into a phone conversation or a Zoom or a FaceTime or something, right? Where you say, oh, yeah, well, I really am. Let's meet for coffee, right? So that's kind of the progression of that. And it's like anything else, right? You are not likely to meet the person of your dreams in a day or a week or a month, because look, I mean, how many people are even in that category where you would respond to them so strongly, right, that you're just going to resonate right away. So it takes time and it takes patience. And I think the people really don't recognize when they're getting into it that this is almost a part-time job.
This is what I hear, is that there's so much that goes into it. My thought is there's got to be a filtration system in all of these, that you are putting up, I guess, your wish list or what you're looking for.
Yep.
And interpretation. My son is on a platform and he shared with me briefly to say, Dad, Walt Disney ruined it for all of us, because all the women, younger women, by the way, younger women have the Walt Disney expectation of Prince Charming, and none of us can live up to it. So the idea of trying to compete in younger dating circles on date sites is almost impossible. Tell me about the filtration process, how you try to shorten this time period down to get to Mr. Right or Mrs. Wrong as a part of these platforms.
Yeah, it's interesting about that. I think, Duncan, is that the strategy that I think works really well for people who are fishing online, right? They're looking for a potential date or partner, is to put challenging questions to them and just see how that person responds, right? So you'll find out, do they have a sense of humor if that's important to you, right? Are they smart enough to get this? Are they indoor people or are they outdoor people? So you get a sense in this first engagement. Once you're in the mix, you're oftentimes having conversations with 4 or 5 different people at once. And if it starts to sort of peter out, you said, thank you, you're a great girl, you're just not my girl. Good luck to you, right? Or it just sort of fades off into, you just stop, or you meet somebody that's like, wow, I'm really interested in this person. And you just tend to go deeper on that. And then the dynamic that you'll find is that there may be a relationship where you'll date for a couple of months and then you figure out, well, it's maybe not quite right. And then you're back on the platform again, right? But there are new people coming on every day with this.
That's overwhelming. A question, are there online dating protocols. I say this once again, looking to a friend of mine who's been on these, and he thought he had a good rapport. And then all of a sudden he's ghosted, meaning they never replied again. I would think there
Uh-huh.
was some degree of protocol, hopefully, that's out there to say, hey, you're just not my type. Thank you. As opposed
Yeah.
to having a conversation,
And
having
just
no
go away.
reply again. Well, and
Yeah.
I imagine, in defense of the people who I would see are being rude here, it's overwhelming. If you've got a conversation going with 20 people at the same time, and I'm envisioning a very attractive young lady who may have all the right things and a ton of guys are pursuing her, it gets overwhelming to the point where you can't always be polite just to say to the last 10 people, I'm going to wait a while, or I'm going to filter this out, or
Right.
things
Right.
like that.
And I think that does happen, and people will, because of the anonymity involved. It's just easy just to say, I'm just not going to mess with that anymore. But I
Yeah.
will tell you that one of the differences in dating later in life is that people do seem to have more of a sense of responsibility for communicating things like that. No, you're just not great for me, right? Nobody wants to tell somebody that they're not a good match for them, right? They don't want to tell someone that, even when they're feeling that. And so a lot of that ghosting comes from, I don't know how to say that to him, right?
Well, it's
I
interesting.
just,
Listening to one of your podcasts, I think one of your guests said, I thought it was a filing system. So every time I swiped right, it went into a folder of 20 people I'll get back to later. And they didn't understand what it was. And so there are 20 people that said, wow, I like them. And then she never replied, because there is a lesson, many lessons to be learned here about how to do all of this. That's
yeah.
very intimidating
Well, you have to kind of toughen your skin up a little bit, right? Because I liken it, Duncan, to being in sales, right? You got to get used to a lot of no's,
all the
right?
time. Yeah, yeah. Listen, as a guy in 30 years in sales, I'll be the first one to say I got it. It'll be easier for some than others. A lot of this in your podcast says a lot about this is affirmation. You're on a site now where you can get a lot of accolades. Somebody swiped right on me. Somebody actually likes me, and the boost of your ego to say, wow, there are people out there that like me. This can be an addictive yet time consuming event as well.
So let me tell you a personal story that relates to that. And that is that I was intimidated going back online after being married for 25 years, right? I was married for 25 years. I went online thinking, who's going to want me, right? And so you're right. The response was validating, right? It's validating, and it can have the opposite effect, right? If you're shouting into the forest and you hear no echoes, right? Then it could be a little disheartening, right? But I would say that yes, you got to toughen up your skin a little bit. It's not, look, they don't even know if they're rejecting you, they don't even know you really,
No,
right?
they're
They
looking at a
know
picture and a
that
paragraph.
little surface level kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
So they don't really even have enough information to fully reject you. Yeah, that's right. And it's there, and it's, you got to look at it, right? As, hey, it's their loss.
So there's so many different online dating platforms for retired people or of that
Yeah.
ilk. Are there two or three suggestions you would say, hey, this is really geared for people in their 50s plus, 60s plus,
Yeah,
that people can start with?
there are a couple of them, and there's uh, a site called Silver Singles, and there's another site called Our Time. And both of those tend to be very good, and they're very focused on sort of the over 55 category.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I would say that don't discount the platforms like Match or eHarmony or Bumble, because people are on there as well. And you just have to experiment with that a little bit to find, look, where's my tribe, right?
Right.
Where are the people that I respond to and that respond to me? And it's going to be very different for people depending on how they're made up, right? And what they're really looking for.
Yeah.
But if you go into it and say, look, this is an experiment, right? And you don't one thing that so I have a lot of uh, therapists and counselors on my program,
Sure.
and the thing that I hear over and over again from them is that you should really look at this as an adventure. So
Mhm.
you're kind of putting yourself out there maybe uncomfortably even at first. But honestly, the stakes are low, right? I mean, this is not something that's going to have dire consequences if somebody swipes left on you versus swiping right
I
on
love
you.
the way you mentioned finding your tribe. That is such an apropos comment. I laugh a little bit about that because I know there's so many different subcategories of dating sites. I have a farm outside of Atlanta, and I was riding out to the farm one day. I looked up on a billboard and it was talking about there's a platform for farmers or farmerdating.com or whatever it is. And I just said, seriously, there's a billboard for farmers who are looking for other farmer people. So there are so many categories. Question, and once again, this comes from learning from my son. There are different ways to approach the platforms, and some are free and some are paid platforms. As my son would say, it's filtering down to
Yeah.
find better quality people if you pay, which I think makes all the sense in the world, knowing the complexity of this. In one of your podcasts, you mentioned the concept of reverse engineering to improve your odds. Tell our audience a little bit about that and what that podcast is about and where you're going with it.
And those two things tie together, I think, Duncan, because I always used someone's willingness to pay for the premium capabilities and categories as a proxy for how serious they were.
Yes.
And so I know that women were doing that too. Well, if it's not important enough, so if you go on one of these free sites, you don't know what you're going to be getting, right?
You get
But
what you
if
pay
somebody
for.
you get what you pay for, somebody comes in and says, "This is worth $25 a month to me," right? You at least know that A, they've at least got $25 to do something with. That's important too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that finding romance or finding a relationship is important enough to them to invest in it. And the kind of additional capabilities you get can be important sometimes, right? So going back to having met my wife online 6 years ago now, I didn't hear back from her. I had swiped right. I had seen that she had swiped right. I sent some kind of a message, didn't hear anything back. And if I weren't on the paid program, that would have just gone away after the 24 hours, would have just gone away. That's not a match anymore. Maybe she would have showed up 3 months later or 4 months later. I don't know. But because I was on the paid program, I could like buy an extension of another 24 hours. And then 2 hours after that deadline passed, she responded.
Bingo. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's interesting how that works. So there is a way to this. We haven't gotten to the topic. Reverse engineer. Tell
Yeah.
you how do you improve your odds when you're on the dating apps?
So one thing that guys get wrong all the time is, as a guy and as a guy that's maybe been divorced for a couple of years, I mean, think about it. What kind of pictures do you have of yourself, right? Not that much. And it's usually got kids or you're holding a fish or something like that, right? So guys will tend to go and pick pictures from whatever they have and post that up, which doesn't really do well online.
With
So
their
you talk about
ex-wife. It's a
that's
great
right.
picture of me
Well,
and my ex-wife. It looks like it's been cut out, right? That's a guy thinking.
that's exactly right. Or the things you don't, there's like, don't do a bathroom mirror selfie.
Such a
There are
guy.
all kinds of mistakes that people make like that, right? But again, I'm going to take it back to sales and marketing here. Is that in that world, you're a product. You are your product. So you have to really pay attention to how that first impression comes across. That's not just in the pictures, it's in what you say and how you say it. Because honestly, if you get 5 seconds of attention before a decision, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a
So
long
that's
time.
kind of the reverse engineering approach, is to really kind of put yourself in the mindset of the kind of person that you're really hoping to meet. What is that person? What's going to resonate with that person? What are they going to find interesting and attractive? And they'll engage with you if they think you're interesting, even if you're no George Clooney, right?
That's a really good point. In one of your podcasts, and this is a perfect segue, there are dating coaches. Tell me about what a dating coach is beyond somebody who is your chief marketing officer. What does a dating coach help do nowadays as it relates to getting back in the dating world?
So there is an association of dating professionals that are all dating coaches, and most of them will have a presence online. But because this is so new and so intimidating for people, that oftentimes their clients will simply benefit from them having the kind of conversation that you and I are having about what kind of pictures should I pick? What if I say this about me? How do I engage with someone in those early conversations by text, right? When should I? It's kind of like having a therapist that knows exactly what the paces are to give you the best chance of success. And those costs can range all over the place for a dating coach from $50, right? And then on top of that, you have the matchmakers, right? And the matchmakers can run anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 and
But
more for
next
their
subject.
services.
Don't steal my subject, Dick. Next subject. Let's stick on dating coach. I'm going to go to matchmaking in a minute. The
All right.
dating coach, so is it, I kept using marketing analogy. I guess a dating coach can be anywhere from somebody who's trying to get you to glamour shots for a good photo to a therapist.
Yeah.
Tell me, when you're going from, a few $100s to $5,000 for a dating coach, what are you getting in between, and is it worth this cost?
And it is going to vary by person, right? So how much help you really need. So I'll give you an example. This is a neighbor of mine, right? A neighbor of mine had been widowed for a couple of years and decided that he wanted to meet somebody, and he had retained a dating coach who not only helped build the profile in the right way for him, and he was very uncomfortable with all of this, right? Build the dating profile, but was actually going through and kind of running interference kind of as a wingman for that profile. So, she would go through and select, I think, based on what you've told me, you should probably say yes to this girl, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I got
maybe
the
even
vision in my,
five.
I'm got a vision of my business executive friends who are very dateable, but they're also running empires, and they don't want us to spend
Exactly.
all their time. So they're like, look, here's what I'm looking for. Wow, this is fascinating.
Yes. And there's pluses and minuses on that. I think that it's almost like having a really super bright, always on administrative assistant in your work, right?
Yeah.
You've got that person that just takes care of things, right? That anticipates the kind of things that you want, don't want, need, don't need, what, and moves things out of the way for you. And that's kind of the way to think about these more hands-on dating coaches.
This would be perfect for a really close sister that you have. You want to give it to your sister to say, hey, I want to get back out there. You know me better than anybody. You know what I'm looking for. You know what works for me. You've known me all my life. Go find somebody
Yes.
and pay her $5,000. She would love that. I got three sisters. I'm sure they would enjoy that. Great topic. Let move to one you were alluding to earlier, and these are matchmaking services.
Yeah.
Different here in that my perception here is this is a more proactive, probably more expensive program to say, I don't want to do this myself. Let's just cut to the quick. Matchmaking service. Tell me what this is about relative to online dating sites and what the value is.
Yeah. So the real difference that a professional matchmaker will bring is, A, they're going to insist that they will probably hire the photographer that comes in and does your shoot, right?
There you go. Yeah.
So they know what they're looking for. They're trying to make you very attractive in the right way and authentic in the right way so that they can match you up with people that they go and recruit. So it's almost like you think about it as an employment recruiter, right? I need a chief technology officer. Go find me one. Go find me 10 candidates for this, right? And so the matchmaker, the good matchmakers, will basically get you on a program where they're setting you up on dates that you will meet for the very first time. So it's kind of a blind date for you. You get a little bit of information, but they're calling from all of these sites and from their connections. They tend to be, because they tend to be expensive and really, hands-on. If you are in a place where you're a successful executive, for example, you're limited in time. You're also kind of limited because you don't necessarily want to get on Match.com so everybody all your 500 employees can see that you're dating online, right? So you want some discretion in the process. And so that's really kind of part of what a good matchmaker can bring, because they can work on your behalf without you actually having to be out front.
So a matchmaking company isn't just working with their own stock. In other words, we got rich
That's
people
right.
over here, men, and rich women over here. They're actually going online to the various Bumbles, eHarmonies to try to find this match as well.
Because also, they recognize that there is a much larger pool in that second online community. So you may have in your network over time, 100 guys and 100 women, but that's not really enough numbers to always work out the right way. So I mean, if you were in a room and you had to pick out a business partner out of 100 random people,
Yeah,
right? Somebody that you trust and somebody that is competent and all of that kind of stuff. Well, now you need a bigger pool than that, right? To really find that right fit for you. And it's the same in romantic relationships.
what is the cost for matchmaking services, and what's the success rate? Do they even post success rates?
Well, they don't, and nobody does post the success story. They will always tell you their success stories, and they have them. There's no question about that. But you will never see a number like 70% of our clientele are married in the 2 years after they start with us.
That's
You
just
won't see
waiting for a
that, right?
lawsuit. That's just waiting for a lawsuit.
Yeah, and so I would say, generally speaking, the people who I have spoken to that have used matchmaking services have been generally very happy with those. And the evidence is that the matchmakers that have made this their profession and their business that have been around, and we've got one in Atlanta she's been around, she's been a guest on my show, and she's been in business for 20 years. You don't stay in business. It's like having a restaurant. If you're not making your customers happy,
You go out of
you're
business.
not going to be in business. And
What
so they clearly are.
cost do they do it as a percentage of your income, or is it a monthly
No,
fee based on
no,
time? Or
it's usually it's kind of a package A, package B, package C
gotcha.
kind of thing. You can a la carte the stuff to say, okay, well, I'd like to have 2 dates a month for a 3 month period,
Got it.
or introduce me to 15 people, that kind of thing.
I could easily see if I was ever widowed one day and going through this process, I'd probably spend 2 weeks on a dating site and go, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. This is too hard. I'm going to hire somebody to do this. To each his own.
Yeah, and
Question.
somebody like you would have the two options, right? Either of the two options would
Yeah,
work for you. Just somebody being a proxy for you, right?
exactly.
Or somebody doing the full matchmaking service.
My sisters would love this. I mean, heaven forbid that I would ever be widowed. I could see them now. Hey, I need a girlfriend. They'd be like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. But it would also be vindictive, I think, in a lot of ways. Question. On the online platform, is there, I'm sure, scammers, and you mentioned catfishers. So there's some bad people out there with bad
Yeah,
intentions or selfish intentions, maybe not bad. Tell
yeah.
me a little bit about the scammers, catfishers, and how to protect yourself.
So that's it's when that happens is it becomes widely known. So that people will write stories about it. The frequency of those kinds of things is really small, right? So yes, you have to be smart, right? Don't go, meet somebody at a public coffee shop, right? Don't go get in their car to go off somewhere the first time. If somebody's telling you a sob story and money comes up, don't go there, right?
Ah,
And that's probably more common than anything else, right? Love bombing, right? In the parlance, where somebody just makes you feel that you haven't even met them, but they make you feel like you're perfect for them, and you're great, and they develop this relationship, and then they've had this tragedy where all of a sudden they need $1,000. So stuff like that happens.
I was listening to a speech by our chief of police here in Atlanta talking about domestic crimes. And the number one thing he was saying is that people who are meeting online, unfortunately, have some bad intentions. And some of the crimes that are happening is because people aren't paying attention and they're
Yeah.
going out with people who online or on text seem like good people, but they're not being smart. Meaning, to your point, let's go to a coffee shop to begin with. Let's not do our first date on a Saturday night in a place around town that I've never been to before. Just
Right.
being simple common sense, I think, is what everybody's looking for now. Or, intentions, I guess. I guess there are dating sites out there that have certain intentions about of what goes on and what doesn't. And we're talking sex. Let's just go there.
Yeah.
And nowadays, dating, who knows? If I had to go out and date again, is there still a thing of kissing on the first date? And I know there are dating apps that are specifically for things that are a little more risque. And I think
Yeah.
those are the places you have to learn the protocols based on the dating apps that you're going to and
I think that
understanding what the game is, right?
I think that's right. So you really do kind of have to do your research about that. You probably you might not at our age want to go on Tinder for your first
I didn't say that. Excuse me, Tinder.
unless you want to hook up.
But I'm not passing judgment. To each his own. I'd imagine if I can't go there. There's going to be a lot of people with lots of different intentions that want to do lots of different things. And that's why you have so many different websites for dating, for farmers to old people to young people and everything else in between. So anything
Yeah.
goes nowadays. And just be informed, I think, is what we would both say on our podcast as you're going through this. Be conscious of the sites that you're on, what the intention of those sites are, and just be open in communication. That's probably the best advice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, and I do think there's a balance there, right? You should absolutely take the precautions that you would normally take to protect yourself. Don't go into stupid, ridiculous, dangerous situations, right? And where the heart comes into play, that can get a little risky sometimes, right? Because you kind of want to go there, but don't allow that to shut yourself down, right? So that you're afraid to show who you really are to people who you're interested in, because you've got to project as authentic if that's important to you. You've got to be willing to be a little vulnerable, or it's a transactional thing, right? Nobody really wants that.
You said it so wise and so appropriately. The heart is out there and love will find you, but you have to be cautious and you have to be prudent about it. But you have to be not only intentional, but be sincere.
Yes. Yes. Because 99% or more of the people online out there, in my experience and in the experience of all the daters that I've talked to, of course, of the behind the swipe episodes, right, is that's so rare. And they typically are easy to spot. You just have to pay attention.
Hoyt, thank you so much for your time today. Beyond the Swipe is such a great podcast.
Behind the swipe.
I'm sorry, I said Behind the Swipe is a wonderful podcast. I encourage all of our listeners to go there and to listen to his sage advice. There's so many different episodes that we're only touching and scratching the surface of today. Hoyt, is there any way you might leave to everybody else about how to get in touch with you if somebody wants to get in touch with you?
So you can reach me at Hoyt at Behind the Swipe for my email. I'm on Instagram at Behind the Swipe, on Facebook at Behind the Swipe. So I'm out there anywhere you are, and any podcast platform that you listen to, whether it's Apple or Spotify or any one of the 24 other ones out there. The podcast is on all of those. So I encourage you to check it out. Not because I've got great advice. I mean, I'm just the guy that's asking the questions and learning here. I just get great people, and I love having great conversations with them.
Hoyt, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to hearing from you again. I know you're going to keep going with this, and we always got more sage advice coming your way.
Looking forward to it, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.